Hello everyone, my name is Zhang. It is my pleasure to present our latest work titled Shape-Adaptive Ternary-Gaussian Model, Modeling Pointing Uncertainty for Moving Targets of Arbitrary Shapes. Today, interactive systems often incorporate moving targets of arbitrary shapes, such as those found in games and video surveillance systems. Existing studies have looked into the effects of target shape on movement time prediction. Some other studies assumed the endpoints as Gaussian random variables, and predicted the distribution by estimating the parameters. However, there are few attempts to model the pointing uncertainty for moving targets with considerations of target shape. Such modeling should fully reflect the geometric features of targets, which were not taken into account in previous work. Besides, the modeling work must consider other factors and their potential joint impacts. And finally, the structure and coefficients of the proposed model should possess good interpretability. We proposed a model to predict pointing uncertainty for arbitrary shapes based on a two-component assumption. We assumed that the pointing uncertainty of moving targets of arbitrary shapes is a combination of one associated with shape and another caused by motion. When a target is large, stationary, or moving at lower speeds, users tend to optimize their pointing strategy by aiming at different parts of the target to increase their chances of hitting it. This results in endpoint variations that correspond to specific parts of the target shape. As shown in the top left of the figure, these endpoints are scattered in each part of the shape with specific semantics, resulting in a multimodal distribution. When the target is small or fast-moving, users need to adjust their vision and movement to keep up with it. To do so, they often reduce their focus on target features that are not relevant to its motion. As a result, the endpoints of their movements are less affected by the target's shape and more influenced by its motion. As shown in bottom right of the figure, the endpoints are scattered in a unimodal distribution that reflects both the overall size and motion of the target. Specifically, for the shape component, we propose a dual-based model to account for the pointing uncertainty of target shape. We use a dual-space decomposition algorithm that is aligned with human perception to decompose a shape into smaller parts. Each part is then simplified by finding a rectangular shape that closely approximates its geometry. We then create an endpoint distribution for each decomposed part, and combine these distributions into a total endpoint distribution using Gaussian mixture model. For the motion component, we build a 2D Ternary-Gaussian model with the bounding box size of the shape that accounts for the pointing uncertainty of target motion. Finally, we linearly combine the Ternary-Gaussian model with the dual-based model to make the Ternary-Gaussian model adaptable to moving targets with random shapes. Before evaluate the performance of our model, we need to estimate the parameters of two submodels first. Following the experimental setup in dual Gaussian model and 2D Ternary-Gaussian model original studies, we conducted two circular target selection experiments to collect data and fit the parameters of these two models. All parameters show high-fitting square values. Using the estimated parameters, we evaluated our model with three studies. The first study evaluated the dual-based model on static targets to validate its performance in describing shape. The second study tested the overall shape-adaptive Ternary-Gaussian model for moving target shapes, while in the third study we re-recruited participants and changed the experimental design to further evaluate the robustness of our proposed model. As a comparison, the dual Gaussian model and the Inscribed Circle model were included in the first study, while the Ternary-Gaussian model and the Inscribed Circle model were employed in the last two studies. All the studies were conducted on a MSI Trident computer, and the computer was connected to a Wacom Cintiq Pro 32-inch display with a stylus as input. In Study 1 we recruited 15 participants, and the experiment included 3 target sizes and 10 shapes. The Hellinger distance was used to evaluate the performance of different models in all studies, and it is a measure to quantify the similarity between two probability distribution. A lower value of Hellinger distance means that the two distributions are more consistent with each other. Results show that the dual-based model outperforms both the dual Gaussian model and the Inscribed Circle model, as evidenced by smaller Hellinger distance between the predicted and the actual endpoint distributions. In Study 2 we recruited 15 participants, All of them took part in Study 1, and this study included 3 target sizes, 4 speeds, and 10 shapes. We used the collected data in Study 1 and 2 to verify the two-component assumption. We focus on shapes 3 and 10 as their data are representative to justify the assumption. It can be learned from the figure that endpoint distributions in the speed equals 0 pixel per second condition are more affected by target shape, as the distributions of these targets are typically multimodal, along the x-axis for shape 3, along the y-axis for shape 10. Conversely, endpoint distributions in the speed equals 768 pixel per second condition are more affected by target motion, resulting in a unimodal. These results suggest that the endpoint distribution is determined by 2 major components, target shape and motion, and the weights for these 2 components vary depending on target speed. Besides, the endpoint distributions in the size equals 192 pixel condition are more likely to scatter depending on target shape, indicating higher influences from target shape. The endpoint distributions in the size equals 96 pixel condition tend to flock together, indicating higher impacts from target motion. These results suggest that increasing target size can mitigate the effect of the motion component on endpoint distributions. In conclusion, we have observed that the two-component assumption is valid based on our data. Results show that our proposed model outperforms the 2D Ternary-Gaussian model and the Inscribed Circle model, as evidenced by smaller Hellinger distance between the predicted and the actual endpoint distributions. We also performed cross-validation tests. Results show the predicting power of our proposed model is robust across different target shapes and participants. In Study 3, we re-recruited participants and conducted 2 additional experiments to assess our model's performance at extremely high speeds and different orientations. The 2 additional experiments yielded similar results with Study 2, demonstrating the robustness of our model at different speeds and orientations. According to the superior performance achieved by the proposed model, for interface design involving pointing at moving targets of arbitrary shapes, we suggest: pay attention to target shape for slower or larger targets, and focus on optimizing other design factors such as target size and speed for faster and smaller targets. There may be a decomposition method than DO that is more consistent with human perception when pointing to the target. We suggest that future research should pay more attention to human semantic understanding of target shapes. To make a target easier to select, increase the area of parts close to the target's centroid. In this paper, we proposed a two-component assumption to account for the user behavior when pointing at moving targets of arbitrary shapes. And we proposed a Shape-Adaptive Ternary-Gaussian model to predict the endpoint distributions. 3 studies were carried out to validate our proposed model. Results showed that this model fitted the empirical data well and showed the robustness of the model across experimental conditions. In the future, we are interested in extending our research into 3D space such as AR and VR, where target shape and size may dynamically vary as the target moves and the user's viewing angle changes. Thanks for your listening.